Hello and welcome to week 4 of LET 2150. My name is Todd Hurley. I'm your instructor for LET 2150. You have to excuse my voice this week. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here, but we'll get through it anyway. So let's get started right away with week 4's lecture. Again, this is week 4. This week is covering chapter 6 in Raymond Foster's book, Police Technology. Chapter 6 is a brief history of police technology, so we're going to talk about some of the different things associated with the evolvement of police technology. Again, we'll go through some of the first slides here. Assignments, again, they're all under the assignments section on Blackboard. The symbols for that, the two opposing faces, references the discussion boards, and there will be one discussion board this week. This discussion board this week is one of my favorites in this class, just to get different people's perspective on this particular incident. So one thing, let me remind everybody, when you're doing your discussion boards, make sure that you are posting your thread as well as you're posting replies to other people's threads. So your grade is a 10-point grade for the discussion board. So make sure you make your post, but make sure you reply or respond to other people's posts. So your grade split up in half there. So if you only do your post, then you're only going to get a half credit for the discussion board. Okay, the learning objectives for this chapter are: 1, we're going to explore the development of police technology against the background of the different errors that had evolved in the different policing models, political, professional, and community-based models. We're going to expand the tactical and strategic information look at how technology changed by the nature of fingerprint evidence. We'll understand the difference between policy and procedure, and then how that policy and procedures impact or lead to fragmentation in the marketplace. Introduction. We're going to look at history of technology in 2 ways. What happened, the consequences of new technology, and then we're also going to follow a specific piece of information that has been critical to solving crimes for more than 100 years, and we're talking about fingerprint information, and we'll look through that and how that fingerprint information has evolved. Most criminal justice scholars divide the history of American policing into 3 eras. They are the political era, the professional era, and the community-oriented era. Excuse me. The political era. Most police forces were established in the late 19th centuries. They were established by politicians. So politicians were the ones that were creating these departments, and there was a big patronage to the politicians' cronies, or the people that an officer's primary source of information came from people who lived in the community or on their beat. So I like the picture here of the officer at the call box. That was their means of communicating during the day. The next era was the professional policing era. Government and policing evolved out of the patronage into this civil service system. Centralized rules and standards became the model for the professional policing model, and then the control of day-to-day operations was kind of pulled back from the politicians and put in the hands of professional police managers, chiefs, and so forth. Technology's impact on the model through the 1950s and 60s, the idea that police supervisors and managers should control the production of service began to take hold. So really what they're talking about here is managers in that really started to count kind of some of the calls, some of the incidents that officers were responding to, as well as how fast they arrived to those scenes. But that did have a little bit of impact, and And so instead of, right here, instead of officers walking through the community anymore, they were more in the responsive mode. So they wanted to respond to a certain number of calls, or they were maybe even given a quote of a certain number of calls, and how they handled those calls and how fast they got there. Those were the statistics or the information that those police managers were really starting to focus on. Through the 1970s, their continued reliance on what has been seen to be as incident-driven policing. So, we were responding to incidents. The event of the computer made it possible to organize and review the information of incidents. And again, that's really where we started to see the evolution of computer-aided dispatch, organizing those calls, categorizing those calls, and then the development of 911 added to the police's ability to handle incidences. Incident-driven policing, as officers were judged on the number of calls that they were handling, they rose through the ranks. So the concept of professionalism increased. Police managers did not rely on community input. The idea that they knew best, and that created some tension between police and the community. And so the professional model and the idea that changed the relationship between the police and the community. So, the fact, again, kind of coming back to the previous slide where the police maybe kind of thought they knew better, knew how to do better, and that introduced right here the new problem of growing distance between police officers and the communities they serve. So a little tension that arose in those. Here's the discussion board assignment for today, or for this week. It is a YouTube video. It's a state highway patrol officer, and he's pulled over someone for what I believe he suspects of driving under the influence. So it's just how he handles that situation. I really want you to think about technology, the technology that he's using to subdue the suspect here, and just how he handles the situation, and then look at it from the other perspective. If he didn't have that technology, how would he had to handle the situation? So again, this is one of my favorite here. Lots of good opinions come either way, and again, not right or wrong, but whatever point of view that you choose to put out there, make sure that you follow it up or back it up with other than some factor or some other points. Community-oriented policing is the third area. We talk here about there are two social science theories that are on the basis of that. One of them is the norm-responsive theory. Most people are good. People will work together if the goal within the norm standards of the community. The other is a critical social theory. Looks at the way that community comes together to analyze a problem that is preventing the attainment of their goals. So two social science theories that are the basis for community-oriented policing. Problem-oriented policing shares many of the same characteristics of community-oriented policing. Concentrations on situations of crime and how to prevent those crimes. Looks at the community and the definition of community would shift as the problems were solved. So, something to keep in mind here. So we can kind of see here the flow of, and really the technology, excuse me, technology really didn't impact the policing style till we got to the incident-driven policing, where they started to really track and to keep track of the number of incidents and the response times of those incidents. So the changing value of information here is really important to analyze, and how it was organized, and the recall of it, it kind of changed the value of that information. So let's talk about the changing value of information. So in order to do that, we're going to take a look at fingerprint technology and fingerprint applications. So one of the earliest applications of science to criminal investigation is the fingerprint classifications. There are two different types of fingerprints. One is a visible print, and the other is a latent print. A visible print is clearly somebody touching a substance and touching a surface and leaving a visible print you can see with the naked eye. The latent print are hidden prints that are left behind in your natural oils that you have in your hands. They're best obtained off a clean, dry, smooth surface, non-porous surface. The changing value of information. So as the 20th century began, fingerprints were routinely taken from offenders and stored in cards. At the time, this is one of the things I can't fathom. And the bottom picture really kind of, you look at the number of cabinets that they had, and trying to match a print, against 1 million cards, to me it just seems like almost an impossible task. The first system of classification. So there are different types of fingerprints. Loop, whorl, the various ones. So when they started to classify these things, so it maybe narrowed down the number of cards to match from millions to thousands, but still, it seems to me as a monumental task. Then computers really aided in the automation of this process. AFIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System. The process that, when you talk about analyzing fingerprints, are dactylography, software that is used to do that analyzing those are really very complex algorithms. It's used to compare the minutia, in the spaces in the fingerprints. Computer process speeds up the process, but still, when you start to bring that in, you have to understand that the evolution of the computer technology, and back then it still sped up the process, but it still wasn't something that was as fast or as responsive as the systems are today. NCIC, National Crime Information Center. This is something that I'm sure most people have heard of. The NCIC was organized in 1967 by the FBI to handle fingerprints, cards, and requests for comparison. They also began to incorporate criminal histories and other informations associated with those fingerprint cards. So instead of just being a fingerprint card and a name, they started to associate criminal backgrounds, criminal histories with those as well. The problem with that system is that the medium of transmission was U.S. mail, so you'd have to mail off, that information. And so again, looking at, I may have arrested somebody and fingerprinted them, I sent their cards off, that person may have been long gone before we really got the information back. So you can understand how that the impact there. Local agencies forged ahead in developing their own applications, very similar to NCIC, which really kind of led to more fragmentation. Again, local agencies having their own subset of that information, the NCIC. So again, not having a readily shared information. But AFIS technology began to be routinely used, especially in the investigation of cold cases. So that you could take some of the prints that were from a cold case, take it out, digitize that information, and send it back through. And they started to actually to create some success out of doing that. In 1999, the FBA launched iAFIS. It made available the nationwide the fingerprints over 33 million criminals. So again, in 1999, we can see the evolution of being able to share that information, comparing it to a much larger database of fingerprints. And in this case, 33 million were made available in 1999. When we talk about an automated fingerprint identification system or an AFIS system, there are typically two types of systems. There are a capacitive scanning system, a CCD, it's charge coupled device, CCD, or the optical, where it uses a light source to illuminate the suspect's fingerprint and capture it on a latent glass plate. AFIS systems The differences are important for two reasons. Capacitive scanners do not contain the CCD and is more readily miniaturized, and capacitive scanner is actually taking good measurements and is not easily fooled. So it's those are really the two differences. This slide is a little bit dated. The NCIC 2000 promised to take fingerprint technology to the field. That has already taken place, and most local departments may have one or two portable scanners that are tied with cellular technology, so that you're in the field, you can actually verify someone's. If that person has been fingerprinted and in the system, you can verify their identification. It's also commonly used in the courts as well. So when a prisoner is brought into court, they'll scan a fingerprint and they'll verify the identification of that particular prisoner in the court process. Policies and procedures. So it's important to understand the difference between the two. A procedure is just a set of instructions on how you do something, whereas a policy is a broad statement on how things should be done. So, I might give you a procedure of how to do something, how to, answer the phone. You pick up the handset, you speak, say hello, blah, blah, so it's a set, of instructions. Whereas a policy is going to be something that like our agency has a policy on pursuit. So, we don't pursue speeding cars, whatever that is. It's not necessarily a set of instructions, but it's a policy on how we do that. And for our department and most departments, those policies are written down in the general order, so an officer knows specifically what he should and shouldn't do in certain situations. Fragmentation. So, because there are different jurisdictions around and different sets of policies and procedures, that really led even more to fragmentation and how, the inability to communicate or share that information arises because, I have a different policy or procedure for this. So sometimes that information can't be shared readily because of those differences in procedure and different policies. A good example, 18,000 state and local law enforcement agencies throughout the country. So you can imagine the massive differences that can occur in policies and procedures. Different community expectations is another thing. We might have in Grove City have a different expectation on response time as somebody that might live in Ross County. Different equipment and acquisitions according to the size of budgets. So, many people, I'm sure you've seen in the news over the recent years that, cutting back, or cutting out law enforcement and having the county take over instead of a local thing, just because of the budget of that particular local community. And expertise develops at different rates. In Grove City, we've had maybe 2 or 3 homicides in the last 10 years, whereas the city of Columbus has thousands that have occurred in that same time period. So they might have different expertise that develops at those different rates because their experience and their involvement in more of those situations. So fragmentation can occur because policy and procedure and technology. So it's important to understand that that's how that fragmentation occurs, and it's not always technology, but it's a lot of times happens as a result of policies and procedures. So that is chapter 6 for this week. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And again, we have the one discussion board this week. Next week we'll flow right into chapter 7, and also we'll have a quiz next week. So keep that in mind. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Hope you have a good week. Thanks.